TechDaily.ai, your source for technical information. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something super important if you're thinking about building anything new. It's all about, taking that idea, getting it out there actually into users' hands and figuring out if it's working fast. And right at the heart of this is a term you've probably heard bounced around, the minimum viable product. MVP. Sounds a bit corporate, maybe.
It can sound that way, yeah.
But we're going to unpack what it really means, like in practice, for anyone trying to make something happen, not just the theory.
Exactly. And, the ideas we're digging into today, they come from real-world experience, basically helping startups figure out that messy first launch. It's very practical stuff, no fluff.
Right. So, our mission here today in this deep dive is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We want to pull out the absolute key lessons for you. How can you launch something fast, find those first users, get them using it, and crucially, learn from them? Even if, maybe especially if, what you've built is still, well, pretty rough. So let's just jump right in. MVP. It gets thrown around a lot. Can you give us the simple core definition? Cut through the jargon.
Okay, yeah. At its absolute core, an MVP is, it's something ridiculously simple. That's really the phrase to hold on to.
Ridiculously simple.
Yeah, it's just the very, very first thing you hand over to your very first users. And its whole point, its only point really, is to see if you can deliver any value, at all. It's not about being shiny. It's definitely not about having tons of features or, scaling to millions on day one. It's just the bare minimum to test that core question. Does this idea help someone, even a little bit?
Okay, ridiculously simple. That already pushes back against the idea of launching something, perfect. And just so we're crystal clear, an MVP is definitely not the final amazing product you've got pictured in your head.
Oh, absolutely not. That's the #1 misconception.
Right.
The MVP is explicitly not that ideal, polished, feature-packed thing you dream about. It's just a step, a starting point. It's built purely to learn, not to be a mini version of the final product.
Got it. A learning tool, not a mini-me. Okay, now even before you build that ridiculously simple thing, there's this big emphasis on talking to users first.
Yes. Crucial.
But how much talking? Does this mean, years of market research? Do you need to be an expert already?
Thankfully, no, not at all. It doesn't mean you need, massive research projects or anything like that. Just having some real conversations with people who might actually use your thing. That's incredibly valuable.
So some conversation.
Yeah, just enough to understand their problem from their perspective, not yours. And honestly, the best case scenario, if you can swing it, is if you are your own user. If you're scratching your own itch, solving a problem you personally have, then you get instant feedback, right? You know immediately if it's helping or not. That simplifies things a lot.
Being your own user. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
But, okay, what if you're not? The classic question then is, fine, but how do I find these first users to talk to? The advice here seems pretty direct.
It is, and it's almost, it sounds too simple sometimes, but basically, if you decided there's a problem worth solving, then presumably someone you know or someone you can find pretty easily actually has that problem. So logically, the way to find your first user is just go talk to that person, the one you thought of when you identified the problem.
I'll talk to that person.
Yeah. If you find yourself thinking, I'm building this for some mysterious, anonymous group out there I've never met, that's probably a red flag. It might mean you need to pause and really ask, who am I actually helping? Do I really get their problem? You should be building with someone or for someone specific, at least initially, not just for a demographic.
That's a really practical way to think about it. Don't build for mystery users. Start with who you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've talked to people, you get the problem, maybe you are the user. What are the absolute must-do goals when you actually launch? This stuff seems to boil it down to just a few key things.
Yeah, it cuts through all the usual startup noise and focuses on the essentials right at the beginning. There are really just 3 steps in order that you absolutely have to nail. First one, and this is classic foundational advice that's been true for ages. Launch quickly.
Quickly.
The core advice is actually pretty blunt. Launch something bad quickly.
Something bad.
Yeah, it's intentionally stark, right?
Yeah.
To emphasize speed over getting it perfect up front, it works. Second goal, get initial customers. Just get someone, anyone, using what you built.
Anyone at all.
It sounds obvious, I know, but you'd be shocked how many startups burn through time and money building and then fail before a single real user ever touches the product. You have to get past that point. Get 1 user, get 10 users. Just get someone using it. And then, step 3, right after you get those first users on board. Talk to your users and get feedback. As soon as someone's using that initial, maybe bad version, you have to engage. Talk to them. See what they think.
Okay, but isn't there a risk there? Like, founders might just dismiss the feedback because, it's just the MVP, it's not the real thing yet.
That is a huge trap, yes. People think, oh, they don't get the vision. This feedback is irrelevant because the final product will fix this.
Right, they compare it to the dream in their head.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Feedback on that simple, maybe even bad version, it's arguably more valuable.
More valuable, why?
Because that perfect vision in your head, it's just a guess. It's a hypothesis. It might be completely wrong about what people actually need or how they work.
Yeah.
Feedback on the simple MVP tells you if you're even solving the right problem in the right way. It grounds you in reality. It shows you their actual pain points, not the ones you assumed, which ties directly into this really key principle. Hold the problem you're solving tightly. Hold the customer tightly. Hold the solution you're building loosely.
Hold the solution loosely. I like that. It really paints a picture. So, okay, you're getting feedback on this loose solution. How do you decide what to change? Is that iterating or is it pivoting? What's the difference there?
Yeah, this is a super important distinction and where things can go sideways. Often, once founders have built something, they get attached to it, like really attached to the thing itself.
Sure, they built it.
Right. So if it doesn't quite work for the first users or it doesn't solve the problem well, their instinct might be, okay, this thing isn't working for this use case. What else could this thing do? Who else might want this thing? That's basically a pivot starting. There's a great analogy.
Yeah.
The screwdriver. Imagine you build a screwdriver for a mechanic. That's the user. The problem is screwing things in. Okay?
If your screwdriver is, I don't know, clumsy or breaks, pivoting is like saying, okay, mechanics hate my screwdriver. Maybe chefs could use it to stir soup, or cleaners could use it to scrape gunk.
Right. Finding a new job for the broken tool.
Exactly. And the advice here is a firm no, don't do that. The problem was screwing things in. The user was the mechanic. If your solution, the screwdriver, fails them, you don't ditch the mechanic or the problem, you fix the screwdriver. You change the solution until it works for the original problem and the original user. That's iterating.
Okay.
Most successful early companies iterate on the solution relentlessly. They don't pivot the problem or the user just because their first attempt at a solution wasn't quite right.
Iterate the solution, don't pivot the problem user.
Got it.
Okay.
So you've emphasized building fast, keeping it simple, iterating. What does a truly lean MVP actually look like? What are its characteristics?
Right. A lean MVP has some pretty clear markers. First, like we said, it's built fast. And we mean weeks, maybe a few months at the outside, but definitely not years.
Weeks, okay.
This forces simplicity. Sometimes it's code, sure. But often, really early on, it might just be, say, a landing page explaining what you will do, maybe with a simple sign-up form, and you handle everything manually behind the scenes with spreadsheets or emails. Speed is key. Second, it has extremely limited functionality. Like, you have to be brutal about cutting features.
Brutal.
Yeah. Find the absolute core problem for your very first user group and build only the simplest possible way to address their biggest pain point related to that. Ignore everything else for now. Ignore other user types. Ignore nice-to-haves. Just the essentials for that first user. And third, this is critical. You have to see it as just a base to iterate from. Your big vision might be huge, world-changing, but the MVP, it's small, it's constrained, it is only step one.
Just step one.
Just step one, it's not special. You cannot fall in love with your MVP. It's disposable almost. It's meant to be changed, maybe even thrown away later. It's a rough draft.
Built fast, super limited, just a starting point you don't get attached to. It really does sound like you might be building something. Well, maybe a bit shitty compared to the dream, right?
Yeah, that term gets used. And honestly, compared to the final vision, it probably is pretty basic, maybe even embarrassing later.
But the examples show this is the way. Some huge companies started with MVPs that were almost unbelievably simple. Can you remind us of a few?
Oh, absolutely. These are great reality checks. Think about Airbnb. Early days. No online payments. Zero.
No payments. How did that work?
You literally paid your host in cash when you arrived. Also, no map view. And the main coder, part-time, super basic. Or Twitch. It started as Justin.tv. Remember that?
Vaguely, yeah. The life casting thing.
Exactly. Just one channel. Justin's life. 24/7. If he was sleeping, you watched him sleep. Video quality. Terrible. Often couldn't even make out faces clearly. And critically, no dedicated game streaming at first. Only if Justin happened to play a game.
Wow. So different from Twitch today.
Totally. And then Stripe. Started as /dev payments. They didn't have proper bank deals set up initially. It was all handled in a very startup-y way, behind the scenes, very few features. And get this, the founders would literally go to their first customers' offices and install the code for them.
They did the installs themselves.
Yep, part sales, part tech support, part bug finding, all rolled into one.
That is lean.
It is, and the point is, these are all billion-dollar companies now. They got there despite launching with products that were objectively quite limited, maybe even pretty shitty by later standards. Built fast, learned fast. That was the key.
Those examples really drive it home. You don't need perfection to start. But are there exceptions? Like, what about really complex areas, regulations, hardware? Can you always do a super lean MVP?
That's a fair question. There are definitely situations where a simple build-it-in-weeks software MVP isn't realistic. We could call these heavy MVPs, maybe?
Heavy MVPs, okay.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah.
Think biotech developing a new drug, or building rockets, obviously, or launching a new bank or insurance company, heavy regulation there, complex hardware projects. These inherently take longer. You can't just whip up a rocket in 3 weeks.
Right. Regulations, physics, they take time.
Exactly. There's often significant R&D, physical testing, regulatory hoops to jump through. That takes time, sometimes years, and significant capital. But, and this is the really important part, even for these heavy projects, you can still start simply. Even if the final product takes years, your very first step, the thing you use to start conversations and test the core idea, that can often be built super fast.
Thought so.
It could just be a really good website, something built in days, not weeks. A site that clearly explains what you're doing, why it matters, how it's supposed to work. That becomes your anchor point for early talks with users, investors, regulators, partners. It's something tangible long before the heavy lifting is done. So even a heavy project can have a lightweight starting point.
That's a great way to frame it. Even if the thing is complex, the start can be simple. Okay, let's talk about the word launch. It makes people think of, press releases, big announcements, champagne. Isn't that the right picture for this first step?
Definitely not. And this trips up so many founders. They see Apple or Google do a big, polished launch event, tons of press.
Yeah, the Steve Jobs keynote image.
Right. And they think their first launch needs to look like that. But it's totally the wrong model for an early stage venture. I mean, be honest. Can you remember the actual launch day of Google? Or Facebook? Or Twitter?
No, not really.
Exactly, because they weren't huge media events back then. They started small and grew. That idea of a magical launch day where suddenly everyone knows you, it's mostly a myth for startups. So it helps to maybe use different terms. Let's say launch just means getting your first actual customers using your thing.
Yeah.
And press launch is the big splashy event much later. Your goal early on is just the first one. Get any customers as fast as possible. Forget the press launch for now.
Okay, so redefine launch as just getting users. Why is that distinction so vital?
Because you simply cannot know if your idea actually works, if it solves the problem, until real people use it. You can do endless research, write amazing plans, build beautiful slides. None of that proves anything.
It's all theory.
It's all theory. The only way to get real data is to put something, anything, in front of a user and see what happens. Does it help them? Does it break? Do they get confused? That feedback is gold. It's worth way more than another month spent polishing a feature no one might need. Getting it out there is how you learn.
Get out of the building or out of the spreadsheet and into users' hands.
Yeah.
Okay, so if speed and lean are the goals, what are some practical tricks or hacks people can use to actually build that MVP quickly?
Yeah, there are some really effective techniques to force that speed. First one, maybe the most powerful, time box your spec.
Time box the spec.
Set a hard deadline, a short one. Say, 3 weeks from today, we launch something. Then you look at your feature list, your spec, and you cut everything that you can't realistically build and test within those 3 weeks. It forces ruthless prioritization.
Okay. Fixed deadline drives the feature set.
Exactly. Second, write your spec down. Seems basic, but people skip it. Don't just keep the plan in your head. Write down exactly what those features are for the 3-week launch. Why? Because it makes scope creep obvious.
Scope creep, the silent killer.
Totally. If it's not written down, you have a quick check, get a great new idea, and suddenly your 3-week project is 6 weeks, then 12, and you never consciously decided to delay. A written spec forces you to acknowledge if you're changing the plan. Third, cut your spec, because you will fall behind your 3-week plan. It happens.
Okay, so what do you do? Extend the deadline.
No, that's the key. Don't extend the deadline. You cut the spec again. You look at what's left, figure out what's truly essential for that very first interaction, and cut the rest, even if it hurts, even if it's a feature you love. Launching something on time builds momentum. Delays kill it. Launching imperfectly is better than not launching. And the last one is more of a mindset hack, tying back to what we said earlier. Don't fall in love with your MVP.
Right, the first grade paper idea.
Exactly. Keep reminding yourself this is just step one. It's temporary. It's supposed to be imperfect. It will change. It's a learning tool, not your masterpiece. If you get too attached, you won't listen to feedback. You won't want to change it. It's not precious. Let it go.
Don't fall in love with your MVP. That's sticky. Okay, so wrapping this all together, why do these principles matter so much for you listening right now? Maybe with an idea, maybe feeling stuck.
They matter because they offer a clear path through all the uncertainty. Building something new feels overwhelming, right? There's this pressure to get it perfect. These ideas say, forget perfect, start small, start fast. Find a real problem for a real person. Build the absolute simplest thing you can super quickly to just start helping them. Get it in their hands, talk to them, learn, iterate. Your success early on isn't about a flawless launch. It's about starting, learning directly from users, and improving rapidly based on what they actually do with your product. It's about action and learning, not endless planning.
Action and learning over planning. That really hits home. Which leaves us with maybe one final thought for you to chew on. If the whole point of an MVP is to launch something imperfect quickly, specifically so you can learn from feedback and find out where you were wrong, what does that say about how comfortable you need to be with being wrong early and often? How willing are you to seek out criticism, not praise, for your first attempt? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. This podcast is sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, hyper-converged in VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, SA365, a turnkey security appliance, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com or email your project requirements to sales@stonefly.com.